Shamanism, a complete deep dive. Siberian origins, South American plant traditions, Korean Muism, and the universal shamanic map. The word shaman comes from the Tungus, a man of Siberia, the one who sees in the dark, who crosses between worlds, who retrieves what has been lost from the soul. The Shipibo curandero sings the icaros that hold the healing. The Korean mudang dances in full possession of the spirits so that the community can speak to what it cannot ordinarily see. The oldest technology of consciousness on Earth. Personal reading series Halagricity, May Yigmung Jirmaltai, co-productions. Contents. Introduction, the oldest technology of consciousness. Part 1, what shamanism is, the core defining features. Part 2, the three worlds, upper, middle, and lower. Part 3, the world tree axis mundi. Part 4, the shamanic journey, mechanics and method. Part 5, soul retrieval, the central healing technology. Part 6, spirit animals, power animals. Part 7, the shamanic calling, illness, crisis, and election. Part 8, Siberian shamanism, the original tradition. Part 9, Tungus and Evenki shamanism, the source. Part 10, the Siberian shaman's costume, a cosmos worn. Part 11, the drum, the shaman's horse. Part 12, Yekat and Buryat shamanism. Part 13, Mongolian shamanism, Tendrism. Part 14, South American shamanism, the plant teachers. Part 15, Shipibo curanderismo, song as healing technology. Part 16, the icaros, sacred songs of the Amazon. Part 17, ayahuasca, the vine of souls. Part 18, the Andean tradition, pipos and apis. Part 19, Huachuma San Pedro, the grandfather cactus. Part 20, Korean Muism, the female shamanic tradition. Part 21, the mudang, Korea's female shamans. Part 22, Gut, the Korean shamanic ceremony. Part 23, the spirits of Korean Muism. Part 24, soul retrieval across traditions, a comparative map. Part 25, the Halagric ancestor altar and shamanic practice. Part 26, the Halagricity lens, non-ordinary reality, and the living altar. Introduction. Shamanism is the oldest technology of consciousness available to the human species, predating all the world's organized religions, predating writing, predating civilization in any formal sense, present in the archaeological record from at least years ago. Every tradition in the Halagricity library, including the most sophisticated philosophical systems of India, China, and Greece, has roots that ultimately reach back to the shamanic layer of human sacred experience, the recognition that the visible world is embedded in a larger invisible world, that specific human beings can be trained to navigate that larger world and retrieve information and power from it, and that this navigation is the primary technology for healing, guidance, and community well-being. This guide covers 3 specific shamanic traditions in depth, chosen because they represent 3 distinct regional expressions of the universal shamanic pattern, and because each offers specific gifts directly relevant to Halagric practice, Siberian shamanism, South American shamanism, and Korean Muism. Critically, this guide approaches the shamanic traditions with the same Halagric lens applied to every other tradition, factual, respectful, and honest about the distinction between what is documented and what is claimed, between what is genuinely accessible to outside practitioners and what is appropriately restricted to those trained within the specific tradition. The plant medicine traditions in particular require careful treatment. Their genuine power and their genuine risks are both real, and neither can be safely ignored. What shamanism is the core defining features. The word shaman comes from the Tungus word amen, referring to the specific type of ritual specialist found among the indigenous peoples of Siberia who enters specific states of altered consciousness to interact with spirits on behalf of the community. The Russian anthropologist Mircea Eliades Muntorziuber studied shamanism. Archaic techniques of ecstasy established the comparative framework through which the commonalities across diverse indigenous traditions came to be understood as expressions of a single fundamental pattern. The core defining features of shamanism. The shaman specialized in non-ordinary states of consciousness, deliberately entered, not passive or accidental. The shaman trains to navigate altered states of consciousness with specific intentionality. The shaman interacts with spirits. The non-ordinary reality the shaman navigates is populated by specific beings, ancestral spirits, nature spirits, helping spirits, illness spirits, with whom the shaman develops working relationships. The shaman acts on behalf of the community. Shamanism is fundamentally a community service. The shaman's navigation of non-ordinary reality is for the purpose of healing, divination, and guidance for specific community members and the community as a whole. The shaman mediates between worlds. The shaman occupies the boundary between ordinary and non-ordinary reality, capable of moving between them in ways that ordinary community members cannot. This healing is central. The primary function of shamanic practice in virtually every tradition is healing. Physical illness, psychological distress, community disruption, and the specific condition of soul loss. All the specific techniques, the shamanic journey, soul retrieval, power animal retrieval, extraction, and psychopomp work are found across diverse traditions with remarkable consistency. The shaman is called, not chosen. Shamans across traditions are not volunteers. They are called by the spirits through specific experiences that leave them no choice but to accept the vocation or suffer the consequences. The three worlds, the universal shamanic cosmological map. Across the extraordinary diversity of shamanic traditions, from Siberia to the Amazon, from Korea to the Amazon, from West Africa to the Arctic, a consistent cosmological structure appears. The universe is organized into three worlds, connected by a central axis, and navigable by the trained practitioner. The three worlds. The upper world, the realm above, typically reached by ascending through or above the sky. The upper world is generally associated with higher spiritual beings, ancestors who have ascended to higher spiritual states, teachers and guides of a more celestial character, future knowledge and broad cosmic perspective. The upper world tends to have a quality of luminosity and expansiveness. The middle world, the world of ordinary everyday reality, but understood as also containing its non-ordinary dimension. The spirits of nature inhabit the middle world, the spirits of specific trees, specific rivers, specific stones, specific places, specific animals in the wild. The middle world is also where the wandering dead may be found, those who have died but not fully transitioned to another state. Shamanic work in the middle world includes connecting with nature's spirits, tracking lost objects or people, working with the recently dead. The lower world, the realm below, typically reached by descending through an opening in the earth. Despite the name, the lower world is not the equivalent of hell in the Abrahamic sense. It is generally understood as the realm of earth spirits and nature powers, the home of power animals and totemic helpers, the source of grounded earthly wisdom. The lower world has a quality of density, richness, and primal power. Most shamanic healing work is done in the lower world. The boundary between worlds, the three worlds, are separated by membranes or boundaries that ordinary consciousness cannot cross. The shaman's primary skill is the trained capacity to cross these boundaries consciously and with intentionality, to enter the other worlds, to find what is needed, and to return with it to the ordinary world. The world tree axis mundi, the connection between worlds. The world tree is the axis mundi, the central axis that connects the three worlds, the specific point where movement between worlds is most accessible, and the structure along which the shaman climbs upward to the upper world or descends to the lower. The world tree's appearances. The world tree appears in virtually every shamanic tradition in the world. The Siberian shaman climbs the world tree in trance. The Tungus shaman's drum is made from the wood of the world tree. The Norse god Odin hung on Yggdrasil for 9 days to receive the runes. The main ceiba tree connects the underworld through its roots, the earth world in its trunk, and the heavens in its branches. The Hindu Mount Meru and the Buddhist cosmic mountain serve the same cosmological function. The Kabbalistic tree of life maps the same structure onto the human soul. Even the Christian cross has been interpreted as an axis mundi symbol. Connection to halagricity. The world tree, the axis mundi, the central axis connecting the three worlds along which the shaman travels, is the shamanic tradition's cosmological equivalent of what every tradition in the halagricity library expresses through its own specific vocabulary. The Suvipotio Maidan is the axis mundi of the Voda ceremony. The Hindushekhara tower points to heaven above the Garbhagriha. The Stonehenge solstice alignment is the axis mundi of the Druidic sacred landscape. The Kabbalistic tree of life is the axis mundi of Jewish mystical cosmology. Every tradition that maps the structure of existence identifies a vertical axis connecting the divine above with the earth below, and places the practitioner's work at the intersection of that axis with the horizontal plane of ordinary reality. The shaman is the practitioner who most explicitly and most literally navigates that axis. The shamanic journey, mechanics and method. The shamanic journey, the deliberate entry into an altered state of consciousness to navigate non-ordinary reality, is the fundamental shamanic technology. It is not a vision or a hallucination in the passive sense. It is a directed navigation of non-ordinary reality with specific intention, specific destination, and specific purpose. The shaman travels with intention and returns with specific information or power that can be applied to the ordinary world. The shamanic journey. Complete mechanics. The intention. Before beginning the journey, the shaman sets a specific clear intention. I am going to the lower world to find power animals, or I am going to the upper world to ask my teacher about. The journey is purposeful, not exploratory. The vehicle. The most universal shamanic induction method is rhythmic sound. Typically the drum, though rattles, singing, and other sound instruments also serve. The specific drumming rhythm most used in core shamanic practice is approximately icaros beats per minute, a theta wave-inducing rhythm that facilitates the specific state of consciousness in which journeying occurs. The entry point. The shaman enters the journey through a specific imagined entry point, a particular hole in the ground, a cave, a tree root, or a lake for lower world journeys, a rainbow, a tall tree, or a mountain peak for upper world journeys. The entry point is typically one the shaman has used before. Familiarity deepens the path. The journey itself. In the altered state, the shaman experiences non-ordinary reality with the same sensory vividness as ordinary reality, seeing, hearing, feeling, and sometimes smelling and tasting. The spirits encountered are not passive images. They communicate, they resist, they have their own agendas and their own knowledge. The return. When the work is complete, the shaman returns to the entry point and ascends back to the ordinary world. The specific drumming pattern shifts to signal the return. The integration. What the shaman brings back, information, power, soul fragments, power animals, is applied to the specific healing or guidance need that motivated the journey. The integration of the journey's results into the ordinary world is as important as the journey itself. Soul retrieval. The central healing technology. Soul retrieval is the most distinctively shamanic of all healing practices, the specific shamanic technology for recovering parts of the soul that have been lost through trauma, shock, or chronic distress. It is based on a specific understanding of trauma's mechanism that differs fundamentally from psychological or biomedical models. In the shamanic view, when a human being experiences overwhelming trauma, a part of the soul leaves the body, a protective dissociation that is understood as a spiritual reality rather than merely a psychological metaphor. Soul loss. The diagnosis. Soul loss is understood as the underlying cause of a wide range of conditions: chronic depression, addictions, difficulty being fully present in one's life, a persistent sense of emptiness or incompleteness, physical illness that does not respond to ordinary treatment, and the specific quality of numbness and disconnection that follows severe trauma. The shamanic view is not that these conditions have psychological causes to be treated, it is that the soul has literally left and needs to be literally retrieved. The soul retrieval process. The diagnosis. The shaman determines through their own journey or through observation that soul loss is the presenting issue, that a part of this person's soul is not in the body where it belongs. The journey to find the lost soul part. The shaman journeys to the non-ordinary reality where the lost soul part is located. This may be in the past, in the lower world, or in another location accessible only through non-ordinary consciousness. The negotiation. The soul part may not want to come back. It left because the ordinary reality was unsafe. The shaman must communicate to the soul part that it is now safe to return, that the person is ready to receive it and to make the changes necessary to support it. The return. The shaman brings the soul part back and blows it into the person, literally breathing the returned soul part back into the body. The follow-up. Soul retrieval without integration work is incomplete. The person needs to do the inner work necessary to welcome and sustain the returned soul part. This may involve therapy, changes in behavior, ritual practices, or other forms of support. The hologric living altar connection. The hologric concept of the living altar, an altar oriented toward the living versions of the self and loved ones across simultaneous time, connected to shamanic soul retrieval, is the most direct application of this shamanic technology in the hologricity framework. The living altar creates the material conditions in the ordinary world for the reception and sustaining of retrieved soul parts. The shamanic calling illness, crisis, and election. Across all shamanic traditions, the shaman does not choose their vocation. They are chosen by the spirits through specific experiences that are typically characterized by crisis, illness, or some form of breakdown. This shamanic illness is the initiatory ordeal through which the spirits claim the person who will serve as their conduit, and refusing the calling is understood as guaranteeing the continuation or worsening of the crisis. Forms of the shamanic calling. Initiatory illness, the most common form, a specific, often serious illness that defies ordinary medical explanation or treatment, which only resolves when the person accepts the shamanic vocation. In Siberian traditions, this illness is understood as the spirits dismembering the candidate and reconstituting them as a shaman. In Korean Muism, the specific illness associated with the mudang calling is called Sinbyong, a specific complex of symptoms that is recognized by experienced mudang as the spirit's call. Near-death experience, a serious accident, surgery, or illness that brings the person to the boundary between life and death, and in which they have specific experiences of not ordinary reality that they bring back as evidence of the shamanic capacity. Ancestral election, being born into a shamanic lineage. Some traditions hold that shamanic ability runs in families, and that specific children are elected by the ancestral shamans before birth. Lightning strike. In some traditions, surviving a lightning strike is one of the most powerful possible signs of shamanic election. The direct contact with the sky's sacred power is understood as the spirit's most dramatic form of calling. The significance: the shamanic calling is not a choice, it is a recognition. This distinguishes the shaman from the ordinary practitioner of any tradition. The shaman did not select their path through reasoning or preference. They were identified by the non-ordinary reality as someone capable of serving as a bridge between worlds, and the specific ordeals of the calling are the training and initiation that the spirits provide. Siberian shamanism, the original tradition. Siberia, the vast territory extending from the Ural Mountains to the Pacific Ocean across the northern half of the Asian continent, is the homeland of the shamanic tradition in its most fully documented and most archaeologically ancient form. The indigenous peoples of Siberia maintained shamanic traditions of extraordinary sophistication that were documented in detail by Russian and European scholars from the 1st century onward. Why Siberian shamanism is primary. Several factors make Siberian shamanism the most important starting point for understanding the global shamanic pattern. The word shaman itself comes from the Siberian Evenki Tungus tradition. Siberia is likely the cultural origin point from which the Palo-Indian migrations brought shamanic practices to the Americas approximately years ago, and the Siberian tradition has been documented more comprehensively and over a longer period than most other shamanic traditions. The core features of Siberian shamanism. The shaman's social role. In traditional Siberian societies, the shaman was a specific category of specialist distinct from ordinary religious practitioners, healers, and community leaders. The shaman served specific functions: healing the sick, divination, conducting the dead to the other world, and mediating between the human community and the spirit world that governs nature and fate. The spirit world structure. Siberian shamanism maps a specific three-world cosmology connected by the world tree or cosmic axis. The upper world is the realm of the high god and the celestial spirits. The lower world is the realm of the ruler of the dead and of the earth spirits. The middle world is where humans live alongside the spirits of nature. The shamans helping spirits. The Siberian shaman works with specific spirit helpers, typically one or more primary mother spirits, various animal spirits, and the spirits of deceased shamans. These helpers are the shaman's extended spiritual community, without which the shamanic work is impossible. The ecstatic journey of possession. Siberian shamanism primarily involves ecstatic journey. The shaman's spirit leaves the body to travel to other realms while the body remains accessible. This differs from the possession model that is more common in African diasporic traditions. Both forms occur in Siberia, but the ecstatic journey model is the defining characteristic. Tungus and Evenki shamanism, the source tradition. The Evenki are the indigenous people across the vast territory from the Yenisei River to the Pacific Ocean. Among the most mobile and most adaptable of all Siberian peoples, following the reindeer herds across thousands of kilometers of taiga and tundra. Their Aman is the etymological source of the English word shaman, and their shamanic tradition is among the most fully documented in the ethnographic record. The Evenki world tree and cosmic geography. The Evenki cosmic geography involves a river that flows through all three worlds: the upper world, the middle world, and the lower world, with the shaman traveling along this river to reach specific destinations. This river-based navigation of the cosmos is one of the most distinctive features of the Evenki tradition. The cosmos is not a static structure to be climbed but a flowing process to be navigated, with the shaman as the skilled bowperson who knows the currents. Evenki shamanic spirits, the Onguns. Onguns, the physical representations of helping spirits, small figures, typically made of leather, wood, or metal, that serve as the dwelling places of specific spirits. The Evenki shamans' collection of Onguns represents their community of spirit helpers. The shaman's soul division. Evenki tradition holds that the shaman has multiple souls, Unlike ordinary humans who have a single soul, the shaman's soul is divided into components that can travel independently, some remaining in the body while others journey. This multi-soul model allows the shaman to be simultaneously present in the ordinary world and active in non-ordinary reality. The Harji, the specific soul component that journeys during shamanic trance, traveling through the three worlds while the shaman's body remains in the community. The Harji is the traveler aspect of the shaman's being. Hereditary transmission. Among the Evenki, shamanic ability is understood as inherited, passed through specific lineages. The spirits who worked with a deceased shaman may transfer to a descendant, choosing their new vessel from among the lineage's members. The Siberian shaman's costume, a cosmos worn. The Siberian shaman's ceremonial costume is one of the most symbolically complete sacred garments in the world, a wearable map of the shaman's cosmic geography, a material expression of their relationships with helping spirits, and a practical instrument of shamanic work. Every element of the costume carries specific symbolic meaning. The costume as a whole constitutes the shaman's alternate body, the body they wear when moving between worlds. The shaman's costume, element by element. The iron skeleton. Many Siberian shamanic costumes are seen with iron rings or iron plates representing the shaman's inner skeleton, the immortal iron bonds that the spirits gave the shaman during the initiatory dismemberment. The iron skeleton is the shaman's indestructible spirit form, the form that persists through death and dissolution. Bard features, feathers, wings, and bard imagery are common throughout, the bard being the primary symbol of upper world travel. The shaman's costume enables flight through its bard symbolism. Animal representations, images and physical elements of the shaman's primary spirit helpers, particularly the bear, the eagle, and various other animals specific to the shaman's helping spirit community. Mirrors, polished metal discs attached to the back of the costume, serving as armor against harmful spiritual forces and as instruments of divination. Bells and jingles, metal bells and jingles that sound with every movement of the costumed shaman, the sound scaring away harmful spirits and calling helping spirits to the shaman's aid. The headpiece, a complex headdress with antlers or feathers, sometimes with a face covering. The headpiece marks the shaman's transformation from ordinary human to spirit mediator. The drum, the shaman's horse. The drum is called the shaman's horse in many Siberian traditions, the vehicle that carries the shaman on their journey between worlds. It is simultaneously the most important practical tool of shamanic work, the shaman's most sacred object, and a living being in its own right, made from the wood of the word tree and the skin of a specific animal, containing the spirit of those materials and capable of communication with the shaman. The drum's construction, consecration, and function. The materials. The frame of the shaman's drum is traditionally made from a single piece of wood, ideally from the world tree, or from a tree that has been struck by lightning. The drumhead is made from the skin of a specific animal, deer, reindeer, elk, chosen through divination as the drum's spirit. The construction ceremony. Making a shaman's drum is itself a sacred ceremony. The wood and hide are gathered with specific prayers, the drum is constructed with specific ritual, and the completed drum undergoes a consecration ceremony in which the drum is awakened, its spirit is called into it, and the drum is introduced to the shaman's community of helping spirits. The drum is living being. Once consecrated, the drum is understood as a living spiritual being, not an instrument, but a partner. The shaman feeds the drum, speaks to it, and maintains a specific relationship with it. If the drum is damaged or destroyed, the shaman may become of the drumming pattern. The Siberian shamanic drumbeat is typically in the range of 50 beats per second, a frequency that research has shown to facilitate the specific theta wave states of consciousness in which shamanic journeying occurs. The drum is beaten throughout the journey, maintaining the specific state of consciousness that makes navigation of non-ordinary reality possible. The drum in healing ceremonies. During healing work, the drum is beaten around the patient's body, the sound both driving away illness-causing spirits and calling the patient's soul back if soul loss is the diagnosis. The drumming is not background music, it is active sacred technology. South American Shamanism, the plant teachers. South American shamanism, particularly the traditions of the Amazon basin, the Andes, and the Amazon's tributaries, represents the world's most sophisticated and most fully developed tradition of plant medicine-based healing and consciousness exploration. These traditions have developed over thousands of years of specific technology, the use of specific plant medicines as the primary vehicle for accessing non-ordinary reality, receiving healing, and navigating the spirit world. The plant teacher model. The foundational distinction between South American shamanic plant traditions and all other approaches to psychoactive plants is this: in the Amazonian tradition, the plants are not drugs that produce effects. They are teachers who have specific knowledge to transmit to the practitioner who approaches them correctly. The ayahuasca vine, the hochuma cactus, the pio plant, the psilocybin mushroom. These are understood as intelligent beings who have been working with human consciousness for as long as human be lived in relationship with them. The plant teachers and their domains. Ayahuasca, the vine of souls, a brew combining the ayahuasca vine and the chacruna leaf. The combination produces a Tudsigar visionary state of extraordinary depth and intensity. Used primarily for healing, physical, psychological, and spiritual, and for receiving guidance from the plant teacher and from the spirit world it opens access to. Huachuma San Pedro, the Andean sacred cactus, containing mescaline, used in ceremony by the curanderos of the Andes for at least years. Where ayahuasca tends toward the interior and the dark, Huachuma tends toward the exterior and the light, often described as opening the heart and expanding perception of the ordinary world's sacred nature. Tobacco, the most sacred plant in the Amazon, not the commercial tobacco of cigarettes, but the dark Amazonian mapaco used in ceremonial context. The curandero uses tobacco to open the ceremonial space, to call the spirits, and to conduct the healing work. Tobacco in Amazonian shamanism is fundamentally a protective and sacred plant. Peyote, sacred to the indigenous peoples of Mexico and the Southwest, the plant teacher of the Huichol tradition and of the Native American Church, contains mescaline, used in all-night ceremonies for healing, guidance, and community ceremony. The doshas in Daita. Before working with plant teachers, the Amazonian practitioner undertakes a daita, a period of dietary and behavioral restriction that opens the practitioner's sensitivity to the plant's teaching. The daita is not preparation for the ceremony, it is the ceremony, with the ingestion of the plant as a concentrated event within a longer process. Shipibo curanderismo song as healing technology. The Shipibo Conibo people of the Peruvian Amazon have developed what may be the world's most sophisticated tradition of song-based healing, a tradition in which the curandero perceives the spiritual patterns underlying physical and psychological illness as visual geometric forms and corrects those patterns through specific songs. The tradition is extraordinary in its internal consistency, its sophistication, and its clinical effectiveness as reported by both traditional and Western medical observers. The Shipibo vision of the body. Shipibo healers perceive the human body is covered with a specific geometric pattern, a luminous design that represents the person's spiritual health. When all is well, the pattern is clear, symmetrical, and vibrant. When illness is present, specific portions of the pattern are distorted, dark, or absent. The curandero's task is to perceive the distortion and correct it through the appropriate song. The Shipibo healing tradition in practice. The malocas, traditional ayahuasca ceremonies, are conducted in specific structures. The maloca, a large open structure with a central fire and specific spatial organization. The onania, the most senior Shipibo healer, one who has undergone years of daita with specific plant teachers, has developed a personal relationship with multiple plant spirits, and can perceive and work with the keen patterns of illness and health. The Mireya, an even higher level of Shipibo healer, one who can transform into specific animals and whose healing capacity extends to the most severe conditions. The Mireya tradition is endangered. Very few living practitioners are recognized at this level. The ceremony structure. The ceremony begins after dark. The onani ingests ayahuasca, waits for the specific visionary state to arise, and then begins singing the icaros that the ceremony requires. The icaros are received from the plant spirits, not composed. The healer is a vehicle for the songs that the plants sing, healing individuals in group ceremony. At specific moments, the curandero comes to each participant and sings specific icaros directly to them, the specific song being chosen by what the curandero perceives of that person's spiritual pattern. This individualized healing within the group ceremony format is one of the most sophisticated aspects of the tradition. The icaros, sacred songs of the Amazon. Icaros are the sacred healing songs of Amazonian curanderismo, received from the plant spirits through sustained relationship during the daita process, sung during ceremony to call specific spirits, to open and close the ceremonial space, to guide the participants' visionary experience, and to effect specific healings. They are simultaneously the primary tool of the healer's work and evidence of the healer's relationship with the spirit world. What icaros are? Icaros are not composed in the ordinary sense. A curandero does not sit down and write healing songs. They are received during extended daita with specific plant teachers. The plants sing their songs to the practitioner in dreams, in visions, and in the specific states of consciousness that the daita process opens. The practitioner learns the songs by receiving them from the plant. A curandero's repertoire of icaros represents their community of plant spirit olis. Each icaro is the voice of a specific plant spirit. Connection to halagricity. The Shipibo icaros, the sacred healing songs received from plant spirits and sung to heal the geometric patterns of illness in the human body, are the most complete ancient pearl to the halagric understanding of sacred sound as healing technology. The halagric variance uses specific sounds charged with specific sacred intention to create conditions in the energetic field. The icaro tradition takes this further. The sounds are not charged by the practitioner's intention but received from the plant spirits who are doing the healing. The practitioner is the vehicle, the plant is the physician, the song is the medicine. This is the most complete available model of what the halagric tradition holds about the creative and healing power of sacred sound aligned with the divine reality. Ayahuasca, the vine of souls. Ayahuasca is the sacred plant medicine of the Amazon basin, a brew combining the Banisteriopsis capi vine and the Psychotria viridis leaf. The combination produces a 36-hour state of intensified consciousness with profound visionary content that has been used by Amazonian peoples for healing, divination, and spiritual development for at least 2,000 years. The pharmacology and its sacred significance. The biochemical sophistication of the ayahuasca combination deserves specific acknowledgement. DMT alone is not orally active because the body's monoamine oxidase enzymes break it down before it reaches the brain. The MO inhibitors in the Banisteriopsis capi vine prevent this breakdown, allowing the DMT and the Psychotria viridis leaves to become orally active. The specific combination of these two plants, among thousands of Amazonian plant species, to produce a specific desired effect suggests either extraordinary systematic experimentation or exactly what the tradition claims. The plants told the people how to combine them. Ayahuasca, complete sacred context. Not a recreational substance, the most important thing to understand about ayahuasca in its traditional context is that it is not used recreationally or for psychological exploration in the Western therapeutic sense. It is a sacred medicine used in a sacred context for specific healing purposes. The Western ayahuasca tourism that has developed around it often strips away the sacred context and the trained guidance that make the tradition both safe and effective. The purge, ayahuasca typically produces vomiting that is understood in the tradition not as a side effect to be managed but as a sacred component of the healing, the physical expulsion of illness, trauma, and spiritual debris from the body. The medicine is workings when the purge comes. The medicine, the specific state of consciousness produced by ayahuasca, is called medicine, typically including intense visual content, heightened emotional sensitivity, access to memories and path ordinarily available to consciousness, and the specific quality of the plant teacher's presence as a guiding intelligence in the experience. The healing mechanism. In the Amazonian understanding, ayahuasca works by showing the healer and the patient the spiritual patterns underlying the physical or psychological condition, the distorted keen or its equivalent in other traditions, so that the appropriate healing work can be directed at the actual source rather than at the symptom. Risks. Ayahuasca in inappropriate contexts carries genuine risks. Responsible engagement requires proper preparation, proper context, and proper guidance. The Andine tradition Picos, Apos, and the living cosmos. The Andine shamanic tradition, practiced by the indigenous peoples of the Andes Mountains in Peru, Bolivia, Ecuador, and neighboring regions, is in many respects the most sophisticated and most complete shamanic system in South America. It is also one of the most accessible to outside learners, having been more extensively documented and shared than the Amazonian traditions. The Andine cosmological framework. The Andine tradition is organized around the concept of Pachamama and the Apos. The Andine practitioner works within a specific spiritual geography, the living mountains above, the living earth below, and the human community between. The Andine tradition in practice. The Paco, the Andine spiritual practitioner, working with the energies of the natural world, with the Apos, and with Pachamama to heal, to guide, and to maintain right relationship between the human community and the living cosmos. Ani, the foundational principle of Andine practice, the reciprocal exchange of energy between human beings and the natural world, between the practitioner and their helping spirits, between the individual and the community. Every offering, every healing, every ceremony is an act of Ani, the acknowledgement that all exchange in the cosmos is reciprocal. The despacho, the primary Andine offering ceremony, a complex, beautiful arrangement of symbolic objects assembled with specific prayers and intentions, wrapped in paper, and offered to Pachamama, and the Apos through burning or burying. The despacho is simultaneously a prayer, an offering, and a sacred art form, the coca leaf, the most sacred plant in the Andean tradition, used for divination, for prayer, for the despacho, and for direct communication with the spirits. The specific way the practitioner blows their prayers into the coca leaf before offering it is the Andean equivalent of the prayer-charged sound vibration in other traditions. The apos, the specific mountain spirits, are some of the most powerful sacred beings in the Andean tradition. Each major apu has its own personality, some accessible and friendly, some demanding and fierce. Working with a specific apu requires building a relationship over time through offerings and proper conduct. Korean Muism, the female shamanic tradition. Korean Muism is one of the world's oldest continuous shamanic traditions, a living, fully active sacred tradition practiced by thousands of mudang throughout contemporary Korea. Unlike the Siberian traditions that have been severely disrupted by Soviet policies and the South American traditions that are endangered by cultural change, Korean Muism has maintained remarkable continuity and is currently experiencing a significant revival among younger Koreans seeking connection with their indigenous sacred heritage. The antiquity of Korean Muism. Archaeological evidence suggests shamanic practice in the Korean peninsula extending back at least 2,000 years. Bronze mirrors, shaman drums, and ritual objects found in ancient burial sites are consistent with the shamanic practices documented in contemporary Muism. Chinese historical texts from the 3rd century CE describe the ritual specialists of the ancient Korean kingdoms in terms consistent with shamanic practice. The tradition predates Buddhism and Confucianism and has survived the sustained pressure of both. The distinctive character of Korean Muism. Female-dominated, while male shamans exist, the overwhelming majority of Korean shamanic practitioners are women. This female dominance is one of the most distinctive features of Muism, and it stands in contrast to many Siberian traditions where males and females serve more equally, and to many other shamanic traditions globally. Urban presence. Korean Muism is not only a rural folk tradition, it is practiced in Seoul and other major Korean cities, serving urbanized populations with the same traditional ceremonies that served agricultural communities centuries ago. Possession model. Where Siberian shamanism primarily involves ecstatic journey, Korean Muism primarily involves possession. The spirits enter the mudang's body, and the mudang speaks and acts as the spirit during the ceremony. This possession model is more similar to the African diasporic traditions than to the Siberian ecstatic journey model. Practical orientation. Korean Muism is remarkably practical. People consult mudang for specific, concrete problems, illness, business decisions, family conflicts, the needs of deceased ancestors. The mudang provides specific guidance from the spirits, not general spiritual counsel. This practical orientation reflects the tradition's function as the primary divination and healing system of pre-modern Korean society. The 5,000 spirits, the Korean shamanic spirit world is organized around a vast assembly of specific named spirits, divine generals, nature spirits, ancestral spirits, spirits of the dead, all of whom may be called upon, and may speak through the mudang in ceremony. The mudang Korea's female shamans. The mudang is the Korean female shaman, the specialist practitioner of Muism who has been called by the spirits, has undergone initiation, and serves as the primary mediator between the human community and the Korean spirit world. The mudang is simultaneously a healer, a diviner, an entertainer, and a priest. The mudang's path. Sinbyong, the shamanic calling in Korean tradition manifests as Sinbyong, a specific complex of symptoms, physical illness, psychological disturbance, social withdrawal, and distinctive behavior that experienced mudang recognize as the spirit's claim on the person. Naramsit, the ceremony through which the calling is confirmed and accepted, lasting several days, involving the descent of the specific spirits who will become the mudang's primary working spirits, the formal recognition of the new mudang by the community, and the establishment of the specific spirit relationships that will define the mudang's practice. The spirit mother-grandmother. Every mudang has a specific senior mudang who serves as their teacher and spiritual mother, the one who guided them through Sinbyong, conducted their naramsut, and continues to guide their development. This lineage relationship is essential to the legitimacy of the mudang's practice. The mudang's costume. Like the Siberian shaman's costume, the mudang wears specific ceremonial dress for each spirit they embody during ceremony, changing costumes multiple times in the course of a gut. Each costume is specific to a specific spirit. Wearing the costume is part of how the mudang signals which spirit is present. The mudang's instruments, the jangu, the buk, the jing, the kwangari, each instrument associated with specific spirits and specific ceremonial functions. The gut, the Korean shamanic ceremony. The gut is the Korean shamanic ceremony, the formal gathering of the mudang, and the community for the specific purpose of communicating with the spirits, seeking their guidance or healing, and maintaining right relationship between the human and spirit worlds. A full gut is an extended event lasting from several hours to several days, involving multiple ceremonies that each call specific spirits. The gut, complete ceremony structure. The preparation. Before the gut begins, the mudang prepares the ceremonial space, setting up specific altars for each category of spirit to be called, arranging specific foods and offerings appropriate to each spirit, and conducting preparatory prayer. The mudang, the opening ceremony, purifying the ceremonial space and the participants of any harmful energies or influences that might interfere with the spirit communication. The sequential calling. The gut proceeds through a specific sequence of ceremonies, each calling a different category of spirit. Common sequences include the calling of the guardian general spirits, the calling of the household protective spirits, the calling of the specific ancestral spirits of the family commissioning the gut, the calling of the specific spirits whose involvement is required for the gut's specific purpose, the possession, as each spirit is called through drumming, music, and specific invocation songs. The spirit descends into the mudang's body. The mudang's posture, voice, and behavior change completely. The spirit speaks through the mudang directly to the community. The oracles. The possessed mudang speaks as the spirit, providing specific guidance, revealing the spiritual cause of the client's problems, and prescribing specific remedies. The dancing. The mudang dances in possession. The physical movement of the dance is simultaneously the spirit's self-expression and a practical tool for maintaining and deepening the possession state. The closing. The gut closes with specific ceremonies that send each spirit back to their realm, thank them for their participation, and restore the mudang to ordinary consciousness. The humor. One of the most distinctive features of Korean gut ceremonies is their humor. The spirits, particularly the Goryeo Gungseum, are often comically irreverent, making jokes, teasing the community, and creating laughter as part of the sacred ceremony. This integration of comedy and the sacred is one of Korean Muism's most distinctive characteristics. Soul retrieval across traditions. A comparative map. Soul loss, the condition in which a part of the soul has separated from the whole due to trauma, shock, or extreme distress, and soul retrieval, the shamanic technology for recovering what has been lost, appear across virtually every shamanic tradition in the world with remarkable consistency. The comparison across Siberian, South American, and Korean traditions reveals the universal structure of the diagnosis and its treatment. Soul retrieval across the three traditions. Siberian tradition, diagnosis. The shaman perceives the missing soul part through divination and/or journey. The patient presents with the classic signs of soul loss, chronic illness, depression, dissociation, lack of vitality. Method. The shaman journeys to the non-ordinary reality where the soul part is located, negotiates its return, and brings it back, blowing it into the patient through the crown or the chest. The danger. Soul thieves may have captured the soul part, requiring the retrieving shaman to have the spiritual power to reclaim its. South American diagnosis. The curandero perceives the distortion in the patient's keen that indicates soul loss. Method. During the ayahuasca ceremony, the curandero uses specific icaros to call the lost soul part back and to restore the keen to its proper pattern. The mechanism. The plant spirit assists in the tracking and retrieval of the lost soul part. The curandero works with the plant's intelligence rather than relying solely on their own. Korean Muism, diagnosis. A gut reveals through the spirit communication that a family member's illness or misfortune is related to soul loss. Method. A specific ceremony calls the lost soul back. The mudang may physically go to the location of the traumatic event to retrieve the soul and bring it home. The communal dimension. Korean soul retrieval ceremonies often involve the entire family. The community gathers to welcome the returned soul part back. The hologric ancestor altar and shamanic practice. The living altar concept. The hologric concept of the living altar, an altar oriented toward the living versions of the self and loved ones across simultaneous time, drawing on shamanic soul retrieval concepts, Yoruba Kemetic veneration, Junjin inner child work, and quantum non-locality, finds its most direct ancient parallels in shamanic soul retrieval practice across all three traditions covered in this guide. The living altar is shamanic technology. The foundational shamanic recognition that the soul is not a fixed, unified, continuous thing but a fluid, multiple, recoverable energy that can be lost through trauma and retrieved through specific sacred work, is the metaphysical basis of the living altar concept. When the hologric practitioner maintains an altar oriented toward the living versions of self across time, they are performing a shamanic soul retrieval function, calling back, honoring, and sustaining those aspects of the self soul that may have separated through difficult life experiences. The living altar, shamanic parallels. Siberian parallel, the Evenkai Ungan maintained as a dwelling place for specific helping spirits parallels the living altar's function as a material locus of sacred relationship. The Ongan invites and sustains the spirit's presence in the ordinary world. The living altar invites and sustains the soul dimensions of the self across time. Shipibo parallel, the Shipibo curandero's work of perceiving and restoring the keen parallels the living altar's work of acknowledging and honoring the whole pattern of the self, including the parts that may have fragmented through trauma. Korean parallel, the Korean gut ceremony's work of calling back souls that have been snatched by illness, shock, or death parallels the living altar's practice of calling back and welcoming the aspects of self that may have withdrawn from full participation in the present. The specific halagric contribution, the living altar innovates by orienting not backward to deceased ancestors but across simultaneous time, acknowledging and honoring the past self, the present self, the future self, and the inner divine self. This is shamanic soul retrieval applied not to external trauma but to the soul's relationship with its own temporal dimensions. The holographicity lends non-ordinary reality and the living altar. Shamanism's specific and irreplaceable contribution to holographicity is the most ancient and most practically tested available map of the soul's structure and the soul's healing. Every other tradition in the holographicity library approaches the divine from specific cultural, philosophical, or theological angles. Shamanism approaches the sacred from the angle of direct technical work with the soul's condition, the oldest available clinical approach to the spiritual dimension of human well-being. The three traditions' complementary gifts. Siberian shamanism provides the most complete cartography of the three-world structure and the mechanics of shamanic journey, the map of non-ordinary reality that every other shamanic tradition uses in some form. South American shamanism provides the most sophisticated ancient tradition of plant-assisted healing, the recognition that specific plants are teachers whose specific intelligence can assist in healing that no human practitioner's skill alone can accomplish. Korean Muism provides the most socially integrated and most continuously practiced model of community shamanic ceremony, demonstrating that shamanic practice can be fully incorporated into the ordinary social fabric of a modern nation without losing its essential sacred character. The drum and the variscence. The shamanic drum, the primary technology for inducing the specific state of consciousness in which soul retrieval, spirit communication, and healing work become possible, is the most ancient available parallel to the halagric understanding of sound as a transformative technology. The specific drumbeat frequency that induces theta wave states is the operative mechanism. The sacred frame within which the drumming occurs is what makes the sound sacred rather than merely rhythmic. The variscence operates on the same principle. The sound is charged by the quality of consciousness brought to it, and that quality of consciousness creates the conditions for transformation that the sound alone cannot produce. Connection to holographicity. The shaman's drum is the oldest sacred technology still in use on Earth. The icaros of the Amazon curandero have been healing for as long as the plants have been teaching. The mudang's gut ceremony has been calling the spirits back to the community since before Korea had a written history. These traditions were ancient before the Greek mysteries, before the Egyptian temples, before the Vedas. They are the root layer of human sacred practice, the bedrock under everything else in this library. The halagric practitioner who understands soul retrieval, who maintains the living altar as a practice of calling back what has been lost, who honors the soul's capacity to fragment and to heal, is operating from the deepest and oldest available sacred technology. Grand Rising. The shaman knows that the world is alive. Everything is alive. Everything is conscious. Everything is willing to communicate with the being who approaches it in the right way, adapted from the teaching of multiple shamanic traditions. The drum beats icaros times per minute, and the brain shifts into the frequency where the other worlds become visible. The icaro rises from the healer's throat, and the luminous pattern of the patient's body begins to correct itself. The mudang's ears roll back, and the grandmother spirit speaks through her mouth to the family that has been waiting for 30 years to hear what she has to say. This is the oldest technology. It works. Grand Rising. Personal Reading Series Holographicity, Aiko Productions, May Yikmung Jirmalta.